Greetings and welcome to the latest episode of the Dallas Area Opinion Podcast, probably the most sporadic podcast out there. Welcome back. So much has happened so fast around this country, it's hard to keep track. And I know you're probably beat up over Signalgate. It's only been, this is the fourth day since Mr. Goldberg first reported that he had been on a, top-level chat, Principals Committee chat. So you can watch enough legacy news, right-wing news, left-wing news, this news, that news to catch up on Signalgate. But I want to kind of touch on maybe a side issue for this today and some other things. Let's start this. Have you ever, maybe, you were putting stuff up and you're thinking, there's something missing. There's a bowl missing or something. And you're like, where did I put that? What is that? Where is it? And then after a couple days, you look down and realize someone had pulled that bowl out and put a bunch of fruit in it. You're like, it's right there. It's just right there. And it feels the same way with the Trump administration. It's like there's been something missing. What is it? Well, Signalgate may have exposed what is right there. What are these people doing with their records? There is already one Freedom of Information Act on the record keeping because, as you know, Signal, the app, or have heard, or maybe don't know, but it can auto-delete stuff. And there's a law that says everything the government does needs to be recorded, kept for posterity, so to speak. What are they doing? Well, we get to look into it and find out. There's also something called the Freedom of Information Act. Allows even people like me, which I'm going to get to in a second, to ask for information from the federal government. This is all good. It's really good. Yet, apparently, there may be a chance that a lot of Mr. Trump's administration is disappearing. Conversations, actions, rationale for actions, deciding what to do, not to do. Obviously, if this Signal chat had disappeared, along with Mr. Goldberg being a part of it, what does that mean? We would have no available evidence that our principal committee may be messing up. I mean, as you may have followed up and seen some articles and stuff in the news that Der Spiegel says that they can access some of the personal information, passwords, etc., some of these people that was on this principal committee's chat on Signal, that maybe some of these devices they're still using that have been listed on this Der Spiegel report where they dug up into the wherever that you can find people's personal information. At this point, I think everybody's personal information's out there. Not too much we can do about it unless we blow up the internet. So it's not good. Not good at all. But going back to Freedom of Information Act, like I said, there are already organizations pursuing lawsuits saying that, they're violating the Records Act if we don't have this information. And that's all in good, as I mentioned. So I, in my illustrious rambling about in life, decided to do a Freedom of Information Act on DOGE. Why it's pronounced DOGE, I don't know, but that's a secondary issue. If you ask me, it should be DOG-E, because the organization is the big dog. So, as we look into this, I'm like, why would I want to do a Freedom of Information Act? Just FYI, there's a written blog attached to this, and I put a copy of the email, very generic, very simple, because I'm not one of these big news organizations. I just got to plot my little self into it. So I sent them to the information part of the Freedom of Information Act website, because when I searched, it says, back up a step, to do a Freedom of Information Act request, you need to go to the actual agency and then email their Freedom of Information Act department, or the people who handle the Freedom of Information Act for those specific departments. And it gives you a little thing where you can search, and maybe I didn't search well, but I couldn't find anything for DOGE. Nothing came up. Maybe I should have written it out. I didn't think about it till right now, Department of Government Efficiency. But I sent something out, nothing came up, so I clicked on the little email site for the information and wrote in that, we're looking for information on DOGE and their use of Signal. Are they using it? If so, do they keep separate records? This is not what the email said, but this is the gist of it. And so I was like, let's find out what these people are up to. Because my fear, and I hope you might start thinking about this, is This organization's already pretty controversial. If they're not keeping track of what they are doing, that's just horrendous. So now, not only DOGE, but how much of Trump's administration, higher ups especially, are using things like Signal, maybe there's other apps out there, where they can delete or let information be deleted on what they are doing. I mean, the Trump administration, let's get real. There are certain things, as a conservative, I'm for. I want stronger immigration policy. Straight up. We have a disaster of an immigration policy. Of course, how Trump is running this into the ground is another disaster separately. But, you can see why some people might say, well, this is a good idea, because we desperately need new immigration policy. We need to cut our budget. We need to reduce spending. It is out of hand. We can't afford ourselves. Are there some things the government is doing that we need to keep? Yes, most definitely. But we need to do a better job of managing our budget. And it's not that hard. Again, DOGE, dog-e, whatever you want to call it, I'm calling it dog-e because it's just a dog. The gist behind it, reducing waste and fraud, sounds great. The way they're doing it is a disaster. It has no rhyme or reason in actually reducing waste and fraud. It's just a bunch of, I don't like this, so we're getting rid of it. That's not reducing waste and fraud. And you can't make arbitrary decisions on laws that have passed, budgets have been enacted, on what you don't like that you can get rid of. The fact that some people don't see that as a problem is another problem. But that's what we need to find out. That's why I did this Freedom of Information Act request, or in the process of, because I got to figure out where to send it, to get information on whether or not they are using Signal or not. And if they are, what are they doing to keep records? And then I'll probably pursue those records one way or another to see what they are. Again, I'm a one-man show. This could be a bigger bite than I'm ready to handle. We'll find out. But at least I'm going to start this madness to find, to know what they're doing. Because, like I said, I believe we need to reduce the deficit. We need to reduce the debt. We need to manage our expenses, our budget better. It's Congress's job, but they have failed at this for decades. Every now and then, I think under Clinton, they talk about he managed to balance the budget and then it went south from there. I don't want to get into what party did this and what party did that, because I don't like either party. And I think if they really had our best interests at heart, this budget was a lot easier to balance than they make it out to be. Back in 2012, in my written blog, I went into, if I can think of simple things like this, I know we don't need Musk being an idiot and just chopping things to please himself. I talked about a stair-step process. Basically, you take the current budget and you say to everybody, all the departments, all the federal agencies, Congress's budget, the court's budget, everything, and say, hey, we're just going to do a flat-out 2 to 3% reduction. Pick a number. 2 or 3% reduction, and stair-step that for the first budget. First, October 1st, all the department heads, all the leaders, all the agency heads need to find 2 to 3% of waste. And it could be there. Don't take anything away from what the agency or group or whatever is supposed to do. Just reduce the budget by 2% across the board, including the Pentagon. Wouldn't be hard, probably, and hundreds of billions of dollars to find 2 or 3% in the budget to cut. Just in normal day-to-day operations, if you had to get 2% less money, you're going to find the money. You're going to find the cuts. Rational cuts. Do it the next year. Maybe just 1 or 2%, maybe 2% each year, whatever. It's not going to be drastic cuts. Again, just force the issue, make these people be more efficient in what money they receive from Congress. They're the budget people. Then after that, you can start looking at what programs we need to keep, cut, reduce, maybe even increase. You start making your department more efficient, you have more money to do what you're actually supposed to do. That was my logic back in 2012. Going forward, we still could have done it. If we'd done it in 2012 and then worked forward from there, we'd probably be in a much better shape than we are now, watching this megalomaniac hack up the government. But to that effect, where does he go with all this? There's no rhyme or reason to what he's doing. He's creating inefficiencies and waste in what he's doing. I mean, there's an article, and I'm sorry, I didn't get the reference to it. It is talking about federal workers are getting bounce back email. Back up a step, sorry. When Musk came in, he said that all federal employees have to give an email that says what they did, the 5 things they did for that week. Well, any person who's worked for a corporation and they're told every Monday they need to send an email to their boss that the 5 things they accomplished last week, well, there's going to be a lot of grumbling, but people will do it. I mean, we all know that you got to do what you're told to do. But once you find out your boss is not reading those emails, you take about 3 or 4 weeks of that. And in a corporation, most people will start managing up, so to speak, and letting know this is a waste of time if you are not reading these emails, much less acknowledging what I've done, because good management requires you acknowledge what people have done, what they've done well, what they need to improve on. I mean, in a corporation, because they're trying to make money, they're a little bit more attuned to these kind of things than maybe Musk is with the government. But nowadays, according to this article, the emails are starting to bounce back because the email box is full. That suggests they're not reading these emails. They're just going into a big data dump email box. And there's a problem. We have federal workers. Now, maybe takes 10 or 15 minutes to compose this email, but resources are being used, time is being used, whatever computer space is being used. I don't know if there's any files for this, who's keeping track of it. Some agencies aren't getting this bounce back, some are, according to this article. But if you're in a corporation and your job is to make money, this kind of crap would stop fast. But obviously, DOGE doesn't care. They just made this requirement to make themselves look good. And that's kind of what this is all about. It's just whacking away, making himself look good. Just because, I'm telling people we're getting rid of fraud and waste. What he does is go out and find some, I don't want to use the word questionable. A lot of agencies do a lot of things, many things. Some of it is fruitful. Some of it accomplishes things. Some of it's research, so they're learning things. But he's finding things you can probably tell that some left-leaning, left-wing, whatever word you want to use, congressmen put into the budget because it fits their mindset. Perfectly fine. Do we need it? Debatable. But he's finding stuff in the mass amount of stuff we spend money on, trying to pick things that's going to make his audience act like they're doing something. I mean, is there some research that we don't really need to be doing? I don't know. Again, I'm not going to get into ideologies about how we're spending money. Why we need to just find ways to slow some of this down just at the top level. But, of course, he finds stuff to cut that makes his base or Trump's base and Musk's audience, that ex-audience, act like they're doing something because it goes after liberal things. Well, I'm sure there's some right-wing conservative projects out there that are just as questionable, just as flaky. But they're not going to cut those because that would hurt their audience. So, we're getting a skewed level of cuts towards what sounds good to my audience versus realistic cuts to actual efficiencies in how these operations, the agencies operate. Do we need to cut some staff? Maybe. But that's a year-over-year decision to slowly let some attrition happen, to slowly weed out redundancy in staff, either move them somewhere else or, as the budget calms down, you got to let people go. You do it in a very organized manner, not just laying off 10,000 people into an economy where you're creating a recession, or your boss, Musk's boss, Trump, supposedly creating a recession. It's a failure to so many people, taxpayers, the workers, the people who rely on government contracts to have them just randomly cut without some planning. I mean, like I said, some of what the government does is worthwhile. Sending out Social Security checks. Yeah, left-wing media keeps saying, oh, these things are going to crash and no one's going to get a check. Well, that's fear-mongering on the left. But is there a possibility they're correct? People might start worrying, and creating anxiety in the media, is what both the right and left-wing media do. Create anxiety in Americans just based on whatever tilt they lean still is not productive. but we actually may have to worry how many cuts are happening at the different administrations, agencies that actually will affect Americans. 330, 340 million of us. Most of us, because over the last century, rely on some aspect of the federal government in our lives. Some of us may not, but down the road, government is so involved in our economy that whether you know it or not, probably indirectly, you are going to be affected by what the federal government does or doesn't do. The big ones, of course, I saw an example yesterday where something got cut, and so some agency that contributes money to a food bank or something in Western Michigan has been cut. So all those people aren't going to get whatever contribution they would get for food for poor people in Western Michigan. How big of a deal it is, I don't know. They didn't give a lot of details, but slowly but surely, this let them eat cake mentality that Trump administration is developing is going to come back and bite them. They don't care about the poor in the Trump administration. Straight up, don't. They may call themselves Christians, but they're lying. They're just lying. So maybe they're hoping some real Christians will step in and replace what the government just cut. And I'm sure there probably will be a few that will replace some. But $1 million or whatever is hard to replace. Even in today's multi-$100 billion world, $1 million is still a lot of money, especially for feeding poor people. That's the little things you won't hear about on the national news. They cut Social Security checks, not cut them, but come one Wednesday, when that first Wednesday in the month, those checks go out to that first group of people, and that doesn't happen, even if it's delayed for a day or two, then we're going to hear people talking about what's going on in our federal government. Because people don't like to be bothered with problems until it becomes a problem for them. So, in some strange way, do I want that to happen? No. I don't want the people in Western Michigan to lose their food, but I don't want people to lose their Social Security check either, or not receive it timely, or however it works out. Some billionaire saying my mother or mother-in-law won't complain. Well, he's a billionaire. She can call him up and say, hey, I got no money this month. The vast majority of Americans would be putting a little bit of pressure on their family to come up with them to make up the difference in them not getting a check for a month. Goes 2 months, most budgets are going to be like, not working for me. But our illustrious Mr. Musk, head of DOGE, or not the head of DOGE, depending on what day it is with Donald Trump, has decided to start cutting the budget haphazardly. And sooner or later, whether it's Social Security or not some other agency, a vast swath of Americans are going to feel it. And I just wish we could do something about it before it has such a negative impact on a vast swath of Americans. So I decided we need to find out what they're doing, what they're cutting, what they're honestly doing, and put it out there in the public. This Signal PC Principals Committee chat kind of brought up that bowl you're missing is on the counter full of something. It's great. Got to eat our fruit. Ask Robert Kennedy. Better to eat fruit, some other stuff. And quite frankly, I agree with him. I do not like Robert Kennedy. I think most of his information he spouts is based on some pretty questionable research, but he's also got some good common sense ideas. It's amazing how the good common sense ideas he has gets overshadowed by most of his own self-inflicted wounds, madness, or trite, crap he puts out. It's, again, as a conservative, there are good things. Hey, we need to eat healthier. Nothing wrong with us eating healthier and having the Department of Health, say this. Not a bad thing. Some of the other stuff, fall out of your chair because it's crazy. Do we need cell phones out of school? Yeah, we do. Kids don't need their phones in the classroom except so that parents can reach them in case of emergency. Emergencies happen, but they don't happen every day. Grandma died. They need to know they need to get the kid out of school. But you can call the office, and the office can send the kid home. It's how it used to be done. It can still be done that way. They don't need their cell phones in the classroom. It's a privilege that we've probably let go too far. So the reasons he wants, I don't know. I don't know all that radiation madness he's talking about. Shoot, I don't know. It may even be true. But it wouldn't hurt this country if cell phones were not allowed in the classroom. These are rational ideas. His book, the Fauci book, he spends hundreds of pages, conspiracy theory-laden madness. 2 or 3 pages have valid ideas. It's insane. He talks a couple times about we need, and going back to what Musk is cutting, which is USAID, Kennedy in his book was talking about we need to spend more time helping third world countries get clean water. We do. They need clean water. So we need to think about, that's a good idea. If we're going to do USAID, which we should because it helps to help your friends or people who need help, nothing wrong with it. Just got to manage the budget effectively to do it well, be efficient with it. Helping third world countries get clean water is a worthwhile endeavor. Kennedy said it in his Fauci book. 2 pages of the whole book, maybe, but he said it. But now his bud in DOGE decides to cut the potential for us to do that. So as a conservative, I'm like, we're not talking to each other. You're hurting yourselves. They're tripping over each other. Do they even know it? No. They don't even have a clue. It's sad. But going back to it, we got to find out what's going on with this DOGE. Are they really productive? Do we even know what they're doing? Is history going to know what they're doing? Are they violating this Presidential Records Act out the Yahoo? I think we need to know. So I made my little one-person band, banging the little drum and strumming the banjo, attempt to reach out to the federal government and do a Freedom of Information Act request to get a better handle on this. I think there are some well-funded organizations that could do this also. Like I said, there's one going after Signal on some of this other stuff. I wish them the best of luck. I hope they're successful in finding out the information. It would be great to hear we are keeping records and that the left-wing media and one-man bands like myself aren't paying enough attention to realize everything's okay. I don't think so, honestly. I got to admit it, not too optimistic about the whole thing, but it would be beneficial if we find out good things are happening. Again, as a conservative, let's reduce the budget. Let's reduce spending. But let's take care of what we need to take care of, who we need to take care of. America first. Yeah, that's us. Make sure those security checks go out. So everybody talks about saving Social Security. No, let's make it better, but make it work. Okay? We don't need to privatize it. That's the biggest disaster going because some nut will lose all the money trying to make money for themselves. The worst thing to do is privatize it. It's a joke to privatize it. But we do need to find ways, and I've written in my blog some ideas. It just amazes me that if I can sit around on some random evening, come up with some possible policies to handle some of the problems. I don't know if they're viable, but at least I'm thinking, and I'm not even thinking that far outside the box in some of my ideas. It's pretty straightforward. Just move some of the money around. Take some money from here, put it in Social Security. It's not that difficult, at least in my eyes. Why our government, who has all these educated people in think tanks running around D.C., trip over themselves so much, it's pathetic. There are some very simple ideas. Like I said, you could stair-step the budget down, take 2% off the top. They're going to find waste within the organizations to make the organizations work. If you task the department heads and then they'll task their deputy heads and down the road, down the line to get this done. People will figure it out if you put a little bit of responsibility in this government. Making people write an email saying the 5 things they did last week and then it go to a data dump box, that's not reducing. That's not efficient. That's not reducing waste. Now, I've avoided the word fraud because fraud's a whole different animal. I do believe if there's fraud, I don't know if there's fraud, but if there is fraud, we should go after it. But it's not a bunch of 20-year-olds who have no college degree understand how to find fraud. It's forensic audits. It's going in there and determine. Now, some of it may be so bad that you could see it. I would think most fraud is going to take a little bit of work to root out. But a bunch of 21-year-old kids who have funky nicknames aren't the people to be rooting out true fraud. They may be finding goofy stuff because there's enough waste and inefficiencies you can find to, get rid of. May find some stuff that looks like fraud because they have got sloppy record keeping. I'm talking about Social Security. I mean, they're saying that they really keep track of people that are 150 years old. Well, we need a new system that manages who's alive and receiving checks and who isn't, or who stopped receiving checks. There are ways you can program this in. I mean, I think when you pass away, somebody has to report to Social Security you passed away. Take that number and put it off to the side. If that number is being used again, you find it and go after it. I'm sure there's systems that can be created pretty simply that just once a number is, I hate using the word dead, or technically dead, if it gets popped up again, hey, there's a problem, and it can trigger someone going out there and looking for it and seeing what's going on. But that's an audit kind of thing, real audit kind of thing, not a 20-year-old sleeping in an office because it makes everybody think they're working hard. No, what are they doing? Are they really working hard, or are they just sleeping in the office because it looks good? Again, the efficiencies that DOGE are creating or not creating need to be reviewed. There needs to be an audit of this group because I don't see, they may cut something. Again, it's more political that they're cutting than they are actually cutting waste. In other words, whatever they find they don't like, they're cutting that. Doesn't mean it's waste. May not be a priority for us. That's a different story. But that's what Congress is supposed to figure out. Congress makes a law and says, hey, we need to know if this is happening. We need to be able to help these people. We need to spend money on this. We need to know if we're spending enough money on the highway system. Do we need new highways, federal highways? All those kind of things is how Congress is supposed to allocate money for. Federal agencies are supposed to go, okay, you said we need to do this. Let's see, do we need this much money? Yes, no, maybe. That's what the department heads are supposed to figure out. They can go back to Congress and say, hey, we need more money, or guess what? We're able to reduce this project by a percentage point, and, because we're now focused on efficiency. Those things work, or should work. We are not seeing that from DOGE. We're just not. And they're just randomly cutting stuff is insane. So I hope I get my Freedom of Information Act request straightened out, put in there. Hopefully we will find some more information. I will be sharing it as best I can. Again, I'm a one-man show, so we'll see if I'm able to, get an email with 5 things Elon Musk did last week. I doubt it, but that's what we need in this country. There's some accountability that needs to be done. The signal thing kind of opened up the possibility that many of us can go after a bit more information using these Freedom of Information Acts. You, as a private citizen, have a right to request information. There may be some justification if you do something in specific areas. I don't think you're going to be able to justify asking for the budget of a top secret project. That might not fly so well. But generally, off the top, information about what our government is doing, I don't know. Top secret information doesn't seem to be important to this administration. But generally, off the top, you have a right to know. If you're not seeing something going on in your area that you thought your congressman passed, track it down. They're supposed to respond to you because this government technically is by the people, for the people. It ain't happening now. We all know one of the reasons. Of course, that's another topic, and that's campaign finance reform. We got billionaires buying politicians left and right, specifically one right, and we get crap because of it. I'm a big believer. I've also written proposals for campaign finance reform. I think it's a conservative ideal that we don't need billionaires. Now, there's a difference between being a conservative and being a person who supports billionaires. That's not conservative policy. That's just a person who supports billionaires. Some people think it's conservative policy. It's not. That's a lie. That's a falsehood. No, one man, one vote is the ideal in our Constitution. When someone can spend $250 million to convince people, it still sounds like one man, one vote because everybody still has the same number of votes. But that's skewed reasoning because we live in a media entrenched world. And so that has indirect effect on how people vote. Well, $250 million has a direct effect. Plus, he just bought the president. Flat out, even if that didn't affect one vote because Trump thinks it did, he bought the president. And that's just wrong. If you're not a conservative and don't see that as wrong, then you're not a conservative. We've got to get real about campaign finance reform. Citizens United is a joke. It's just an absolute. Money is not free speech. Free speech is being able to go in, talk to your congressman, your representative, your senator, and say, I'm seeing this. I think our district needs that. I think our state needs more federal funds. You should be able to go talk to them. But that is you as a citizen. Billionaires can't go in there and say, hey, I need my business protected because I'm not making enough money. No, wrong, just wrong. They have a right to run a business. They have a right to be able to manufacture their product, but they don't have a right to skew the system so they get more money vis-a-vis the federal government, especially if they're cutting $1 million for poor people in Western Michigan. Folks, 330 million people, we all get an equal share of the time and expenses of the government. Do billionaire corporations need a little bit more? Yeah, they need the roads so they can transport goods, or shipping lanes to transport them to various markets around the world. It's one simple example. So there is, yes, a greater need for a corporation to have some services than the individual, but they don't have a greater need to be put above you as a person. Very, very important distinction. They do have a right to come in and say, hey, we're looking to do this. They have a right to complain about tariffs. And yes, folks, you're going to pay for the tariffs. Corporations aren't flipping out about tariffs because they're just going to pass the costs on to you. And it won't matter until you quit buying. And then when you quit buying, then the corporations will start worrying about the tariffs. But for right now, they really don't care. It will be passed on to you. Again, because they have much more pull in the government than you do. You got to vote. You got to call your congressman, representative, senator. You got to communicate. Ask information. Ask what the heck these people are doing. Hold this government accountable. Don't think the parties are going to help you. Democrats and Republicans are too busy trying to get elected to help you. They don't care. They'll tell you stuff. They don't care. You are the only person who cares about you. You got to conserve your values. You got to conserve your principles. You got to conserve your government, which means you need to be active. You don't have to do it every day, but you got to be aware of what these people are doing. And I'm talking about both Democrats, Republicans, and the Trump administration. This isn't on them. It's on you. But like I said, as a conservative, I have certain viewpoints that I think are more important. If you're a liberal, you probably have different viewpoints that you think are more important. That's fine. That's what this country's all about. Getting in there and figuring out what actually is going to benefit the vast majority of this country without stomping on the rights of any individual or minority. We don't have to overly protect people, but we have to respect them and protect them. That's part of what this country's about. And if you don't respect that, you're not a conservative. Due process, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about here, means something. A criminal still gets due process. If they're a criminal, they will go to jail because they're a criminal. But individuals get due process to make sure we're not putting non-criminals in jail. It's the whole point of it. Again, something as a conservative you should support. Flat out, due process is real, and as a conservative, you should support, because we don't want people going to jail who don't belong in jail. Morally wrong. People who go to jail, they'll go to court, they'll get convicted, they'll go to jail. It's the whole point of our court. Well, one of the points of our court system. Trump administration is not conservative. They just aren't. We got to dig it out, show the proof, which is they're inefficient in government. They're not saving us money in the budget. They're not following our values at all. Trump said he didn't want to start any wars or whatever. Walking around hegemonic bullshit. We need our friends and allies. I think somebody said in some comment, the millions of stories I stumbled across. Remember 9/11? Our friends came and helped us. What the heck are we doing to those friends nowadays? What are we doing? The signal chat showed that we are not thinking about our friends. Friends help friends. We had a treaty in the 90s that said we would help Ukraine. You don't tear it up just because you're just I don't like using certain words, so I'll stop. But you can't just tear up treaties. Ignore them. Push them aside. As a conservative, you should make sure our word is worth something on this planet. We had friends. We had allies. They're in the dumpster right now because some guy thought he knew everything and knew how to solve everything. That should have been the first sign there was a problem. No one can solve all the problems. Most problems take quite a bunch of people working hard to solve. That's the real answer. It takes work to solve problems. It takes effort, takes people, not person, people. As a conservative, you should believe that. So I'm going to wind up now because, people say podcasts, you're supposed to talk on them. I'm not a very good talker in social situations. I struggle with it. So I watch other podcasts and these people just ramble on, have all sorts of things to say, and I struggle to force all this out. Yet today we made an effort to talk about a lot of things. But the main thing is I hope I'm fruitful with my Freedom of Information Act request for DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which on the surface looks very inefficient. Like I said, in a corporation and your manager isn't reading your accomplishments that he requires you to send to him, the workers, they're going to say, we need a better manager. They'll go up. Like I said, they will manage up. Folks, here's the deal. We, the people of the United States of America, are the manage up. We have to come to ourselves. We are technically the boss. We elect these people, they by the people and for the people. They're supposed to be doing their job for us. It's a big, large job. Takes some oversight. We are the oversight. We are the manage up. It's time we start doing our job. We need new vehicles to do that. You always hear me complain, we need new parties. We do. And I don't mean third parties, I mean major parties. People who put people in office. We need it. We're way past due on it. Like I said, I've been writing for 15 years, and I have put all sorts of ideas off and on in that blog about just general common sense. You can do this, you can do that. It's not that difficult. We just don't have people who represent us and care about doing it. Folks, it's time to manage up. Look to see what these people are doing, not just the administration, but all the Republicans, all the Democrats. There are a few Democrats and a few Republicans who actually do fairly good work. They are the exception to the rule. Y'all have a great day. It's beautiful here in North Texas. Sun's out, warm. I may go sit outside and try to put a little color on my shoulders. Who knows? I got some domesticated chores to do too. Y'all take care and we'll talk to you again. Thank you.